one of your sketches, you then go and you refine them one more time, thinking about some variations, sort of making line quality a little bit better, and finally one last time. Once you got it to like that sort of 85, 95% place, this is where you might want to start working on your turnaround. If you go to your refine line, and some things still might change as you're going. So I'm going to look at just sort of where I've gone next. So I then move to my side. Because again, as I was talking about, like, I didn't necessarily know that this character would have these little guys here, right? Just to sort of indicate that there's something sort of towards the back. What's interesting is, as I was working on this, if I get rid of these, this just felt too, even though this might have sort of lined up, right, thinking about where those lines are, right, that sort of bend beating this sort of bend, even though technically this is where that bend is, right, something that sticks out a little bit further from the face. I just thought it was too boring. It was like, this needs some sort of interruption. And that's why I added in just that little bit of notion, just to give it a little bit more character when you're seeing it from the side. And here, even though from the side this looks totally flat, the tie looks flat against the body, in the profile I thought it'd be more interesting if it popped out a bit. Because if that was not there, right, it works, but then it starts to feel a little bit like he's wearing a bathrobe. And you could always edit that, like see what you think about it. Like with something like this, I might even want to add in a little bit of a pinch, right, where that shirt starts to come in. So these are things that you notice as like the more you start to work on a piece, is how those moments like might start to add up. So I might even come in here. This part isn't super defined up here. It's sort of just like a longer sort of feel. So for me, I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing the shape language of the character, keeping it consistent, and making it interesting. But, right, I want to actually get my thing back, and I'll come and edit that back. But adding in the tie coming out from the front just adds in a little bit more detail that is just interesting for us. And when I'm looking at this, right, here's the inner part going in. This part comes out a little bit further. So I would want this to go in, that to go out. So even though it's on the side, I can still use this area here and this area here. This is amazing. It's like, as you're going, you'll continually notice things. So really look, right? The pens line up with the top. I might need that to be a little bit higher. Here, right, one ear is technically higher than another one. This one is about there. And here, right, with the eyes right inside there. Now, the glasses are at a bit of a tilt, so it's a little bit sort of hard to say. I could come in and sort of make these also tilt, which could be kind of interesting, like thinking about how this character does have like the tilted glasses that are always there. But the profile is important to be able to say like, okay, here, when this is from the side, how far does the muzzle come out? When this angle is here, how many of these on the little chin part do you see? And how much foot do you show, right? So keeping those things in mind when you go to the side. And then you go to the back, and just like in the last video, I did these by having them starting out with them directly on top. So working with this one on top and working with this one on top first. And this one is a little bit easier to do. The back way is a little bit easier to start out, right? But I need to think about the sort of cuff that's at the top here, right? Even though we don't see that, we're showing the back of the hands, right? The sense of the thumb. And if there's any sort of detail that you would have in the back. Also keeping in mind that your feet are going the opposite direction, right? We want to make sure we're seeing the back of the feet, not the front of the feet. So you do have to reverse those. You can't just duplicate it going around. And with this, I did decide to add in just a little bit of this detail at the back, just on one side. So once you've got these, I'm gonna undo these, put those back. You then go to your 3/4 pose, right? So you do your back, your side first, and then you get into your 3/4 pose. And with this, just remembering how you are going to turn the body as if it's broken down into component parts. So let me just do a couple things. I just want to show just a couple ways that this sort of structure might get broken down a little bit. Let me go to a different color. Let's go. Right, so if I'm looking at this character, right, I tried to use some forms, right, thinking about how this almost, Hey Arnold style football head. This is one major sort of form inside here. Notice that the face also, right, this brow or the nose area is going to come out. And this is, right, a three-dimensional form. These are all three-dimensional forms. The neck is a circle or cylinder. The arms. This, I didn't show any bends in the elbows, but this is also one cylinder going through. The body, you can break it down into a couple different elements, right? It's not quite a cube, but you could almost say it's a cube. This is one sort of structure. And then down here, it's almost like an hourglass sort of form, right? But if you really wanted to go box-like, you could talk about how this whole form is almost like a box. Right. So when I look at this over here on this one, move this out of the way. Right here is my same sort of box form. It actually goes up a little bit higher, but we'll keep it about here. There's the upper part of the torso. Notice the three-dimensional sort of turn. Keep it a little bit lighter. And right, technically, body inside there. This area is inside that area. These are inside here, right? This, shoes, sort of boxes. This one, I decided to sort of vary it a little bit. Right, but you can see the sort of three-dimensionality. And again, thinking about the ratio, right? What's nice is I have a center line going directly down, so that's helpful for being able to figure out where to actually put the neck, right? The neck goes directly in the center of the body. So then if I draw dot, 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 I know that the neck is going to come up from this point here, going up. Again, it's a cube slash a, it is sort of a cylinder. Inside here, right, the muzzle comes out a little bit, comes out in front. In front, and then here, this is almost like a little half a pyramid. Right, so you can get that sense of sort of the three-dimensionality of this piece. The head, because it is sort of circular in form, right? I'm thinking about that sort of being rotated, right? It's got that rotation going around it, or through it rather. But let's look at this piece when it's actually directly on top so we can sort of analyze it a little bit more. Let's turn down the opacity. I'm going to bring my 3/4 pose over on top because, like I talked about in the last video, thinking about that sense of foreshortening, So here, even though the character behind, back to my layer 1, right, the character behind starts there, and the other edge is right here, this character's face gets pulled in a little bit because we are looking at it in 3 dimensions, right? There's a tiny bit of foreshortening, not very much, but just enough that it's going to make it feel like it's 3 dimensions, right? Same thing, the ears are going to get pulled back a little bit. This one's still going to be pretty high, but this one's going to get turned in. Everything gets sort of tilted on this sort of angle. And your characters, depending on how detailed they are, might have those sort of elements of, like the hair will look a little bit different. Those elements will sort of change. But for me, right, if I'm thinking about the 3-dimensionality of this, right, I'm going to keep my neck sort of around here. I'm going to add some sort of like guides to myself for where these sort of might start to go. The nose, again, tilted here, right? And I can start to think like this whole form, again, is a box. Is a box. Going down, going across. And I can pull it a little bit more. It's almost like carving. Right, that's now inside there. I'm going to divide it in half just so I know where my parts are. So if this is sort of the halfway mark, right, this is where my nose is going to be. And I know sort of going up into it, going back into space, have the mouth coming down, right? And if the center of the head, right, is right there, then I know I can start to move this down a little bit. This guy sort of going up, this guy sort of going to, sort of tilting in as we go along. And I want to think about if I'm tilting, right, the glasses are also starting to move in that direction. Again, I'm sort of just starting to frame it. This side of the mouth, right, again, is going to be foreshortened. So it means this side's going to be a little bit smaller, coming down into it. And this almost sort of extends out of that box a little bit. This side gets pulled forward because it's closer to us, and it'll go a little bit longer. And these guys down at the bottom. So you can start to see how these are getting formed inside here, right? Let's make my eye a little bit bigger. Again, thinking, I can always draw on top, I can go back, I can erase things. But again, this is not from here to here, even though behind is equal, right? My area is going to be a little bit more, right? Like there's going to be more space. And that mouth is just slightly too big. Like one other thing to watch out for is if I look at this, the edge of the eye comes down. If I look right at the edge of the eye, right, the mouth does not totally reach that yet. It's almost like the edge of the nose is where that reaches, or maybe like the edge of the eyebrow is where that mouth goes, edge of the eyebrow. So you can use other points of the face as guides. So if I go back to my model here, right, if I go straight down, okay, so that needs to get pulled a little bit more back here. Or my eyebrow needs to come over. It's sort of like you got to play between the two. So here, if I go straight down, that's a little bit too far. So I might raise that a bit. Now if it comes down, right, so that's actually going to be a little bit in. Or if I look back here, the edge of the outer eyebrow is where that ends. So if I turn this back, right, edge of the outer eyebrow, that is where that ends, but I might it was looking almost a little too wide. Coming back, you need to see that face part ends right at the bottom of these glasses. Right, there's almost like, maybe it's a tangent, might need to just pull it in a little bit. And then you start going down into this area, right? Since we're looking at the neck is sort of, right, the neck is thinner here, so it might be a little bit thinner inside our area. Our area here. And I can start to think like how this is going to get moved over, again, foreshortening. It doesn't have to be perfect to start out. You can always go back in and adjust these elements later, right? This is getting turned. I can draw out some guidelines for myself, right? I want it to be parallel to this bottom sort of form. So if this is the back of the shoulder, go forward, bring it forward a little bit, right? Again, thinking in boxes or thinking as cubes, just to be able to help us sort of guideline. And like this one, it's already too wide, I can tell. So I'm going to pull it back in a little bit just to start. This one, the arm is going to come out from the top, and it comes to about right there. So I can start to pull, not going with my full straight. Right. I'm just going to block it out, just so I have something there. And this, I can get rid of that back part. And I could even pull this in a little bit. Get rid of this top part just for now. I'll keep it. So you can start to see how this is coming together, right? When I now need to think about how this neck sort of attaches, and don't be afraid to like close this out, look back. Maybe this needs to come down a little bit, curve out on this side. Now I'm going to think about how these parts, yep, are going to come down. Notice that they all sort of meet there, so this is going to get a little bit closer, right? They all start to meet at that very end down there. This side's not going to be as wide. Coming down into it. Pull this side down. And I can think about, okay, this needs to be about here. And that arm is going to get slightly hidden because of the foreshortening and because of that sort of shoulder. I can start to come back in and erase out some of those elements together. Let's get rid of this outside box. Right, so you can start to see how these two are sort of forming, right? And I might want to, I can always go back in and adjust. Let me bring back my 3/4 pose. But it's steadily sort of that refinement, right? I've got to think about the tangents, got to think about where this pocket protector goes, where those pockets go, how the foot would sort of turn, but notice you're losing part of that shoulder as it goes across. And then once you're done, you would then trace over everything. Let's move this guy back over. Hold down Shift as you're sliding, right? Then you would go back over everything with a refined line. And so with this, I have my drawing already set up. But if you wanted to trace over, one thing you could do, I'll do it on this one, on the back, is A, make sure you're choosing a standard sort of size. But if you go into your brushes, so I just have a hard round, let's go back, I'm gonna make a new one. And here, choose black. And with this, foam eraser. That's why. I want to choose hard round. All right, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Right, turn down the back just so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And right, I'm going to increase my flow to 100% since I want to make sure that that is totally set. Whoop. Sure I'm drawing the right layer. Now, when you're drawing normally, you might find that you are a little shaky. I know I'm a little shaky. So what you could do is you could turn on some smoothing at the top here. You can increase it, start a little low, and then that will help you determine, what sort of style you need or how much you need. So inside here, right? And then even more so, if you are like, I need to get even smoother lines. You're just it's just not working. What you can do is if you turn on the little option, turn on pulled string mode, and that will help you out a little bit. What you'll see is there's this little arrow, and notice that there's there's a little circle, and there's a delay, but as I pull, this will follow and it allows me to get exactly where I want. So I'm going to stop there and then come in. Now, I totally went off. I was looking at my other screen. Go here, focus on sort of tracing over and down, right? The bigger, your circle might be big because your smoothing is set to higher. If you turn it down, that circle will get a little smaller. And one thing that can help is turning on the actual pulled string lasso. Right, what's nice is you don't have to do everything. Don't forget, you can always rotate your canvas also, right? So go straight down. Now, if you're on a PC, go to Edit, Preferences, and Cursors, or if you're on a Mac, you'll go to the top button where it says Photoshop and go to Preferences. I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and Cursors, and then inside here, you'll see this option for Show Brush Leash. And now, when I'm drawing with the smoothing, and let's rotate my canvas, I held down R as I did that, you'll see this little string that sort of is like, giddy up, doggy, and that can help a little bit more as you are pulling along. And you'll notice that if you increase the smoothing, there'll be a sort of slack line as you go. Kind of wild to see that line. That is very difficult when it's that high for me. Maybe for you it's easy, I don't know. Let's go up. And you see you can pause, have it go back down. It just allows a little bit of extra. And like that last one was, I'm gonna hold down E, and then there we go. So now I can go back, go up, right? So you see you can get really nice sort of lines. If you hold down R, reset view. So that's what I did with this one. Over here, or that's not what I did. I did it by hand, but you could do it with that one over there if you decide to. And then eventually talk about color. But for right now, I think that's enough for this one video. Keep going on this, and I look forward to seeing what you make.